Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Mercenaries video. This one decided I'm going to just give a quick little upgrade guide as to what abilities you might want to focus on for each of the new characters. I did this last release and people seem to like it quite a lot, so we're going to do it again, and there are going to be 3 different videos for this. One for protectors, one for casters, and one for fighters. So we're going to get right on into it here. Before we do, if you enjoy this type of content, do remember to like and subscribe. There's a ton to help out the channel and keeps the Mercenaries videos coming. Yeah, let's get right on into it. Starting off with Genn Greymane. So Genn is a very, very cool character. He's one that I haven't tested a ton in PvP yet, but I'm excited to try him out. But overall, in terms of his abilities, what I would recommend focusing on is, I think the first 2 are really the main focus, unless you're going for a very specific buffing comp. But due to the 1 cooldown, you probably aren't going to be using this a whole ton, I imagine. You could also be using this in fire, and then he swaps over into his fighter form, which is also pretty cool. So I think just getting the max amount of damage on Blistering Bullet and Space Maker is probably the right move to start out. And then you can get the summon later, but I don't think, unless you have a build really focused on maximizing what you can do with the summon, I probably would wait on leveling the summon. And then we have his items here. So we have Blood Moon, which lets you gain attack and transform when he enters. Smooth Transformation, so he transforms at the end of every turn and gains some health. And then Gilnean Strength, which gives it so after every one of your characters uses an even speed ability, they end up healing some health. This is obviously going to depend on what you want to do with him. However, what I would recommend personally is, unless you have a comp where you really care about Genn coming out as a green, in which case you want to focus on Blood Moon, I think it is better to go with either Smooth Transformation first, so you're getting that transform and some health at the end of every turn, or going for the Gilnean Strength here. And that way, if you have, that's probably more of a build around, so you probably only go for that one if you're using a team with a bunch of even skill abilities, or something that gives you more reason to go for healing strategies. But I think those 2 are the better ones overall, though none of them are bad. I think I would actually probably focus on leveling 1 or 2 of these items before going for the summon here, as I really just think, even though the summon's not bad, it's just a bit more conditional, whereas Genn really benefits from making use of his transform a lot, or if you're building around his healing. But yeah, overall, if you care about him being a green, level Blood Moon first. If you care about him swapping back and forth, then we want to go for Smooth Transformation. And if you're trying to do stuff with even healing, then Gilnean Strength is the way to go on that one, and probably do the summon last. Next up we have Medivh. So Medivh, really cool character here. This is another one where the item's going to depend a lot on your build. But generally, I've played a little bit with Medivh now, and I think the 2 abilities you probably want to focus on first are Arcane Rift. 12 damage really isn't that much, so you really do want to get this maxed out because you need every point of damage you can get with Medivh. So definitely would probably focus this one first. And then between these 2, I found Mage Guard is kind of cool, but I think it's going to involve a very specific build to make it work. And I find I haven't had many opportunities to use it, at least in PvP yet. So I'd recommend the Summon Raven Familiar, as sometimes it can be useful, getting a summon to block a Valera attack the following turn. Spell resistance makes it hard to kill the AoEs, and you can actually combo it with the Arcane Rift, where the next arcane ability deals crit damage, and then the bird, I believe, does an arcane attack. That's pretty cool. But yeah, Arcane Rift, Summon Raven, and then Mage Guard last. In terms of equipment, I'd probably level up the equipment before Mage Guard as well. But there are 2 main equipment I think you're going to want to focus on here, and again, this is going to depend on your build. The one I think is probably his best equipment is Staff of Atesh, which gives your casters +5/+10 at start of the game. So that's a huge buff, just like a cookie buff on steroids, kind of, with extra health, bunch of extra attack, really nice. This one is really good if you have casters you care a ton about, or if you're like more of a caster focused build to give them those extra stats, especially if you have attacking casters. And then Unstable Runes is also really, really good because this can kind of help you slow down a lot of the faster strategies like Trigor and whatnot, because it counters the first ability used each turn, and it can kind of make the opponent do awkward stuff to play around it. The summon also has a 0 speed attack, so you can actually counter its own ability if you're worried about being too fast and countering your own stuff. So very, very powerful equipment here. I think both of his equipments here are probably some of the better equipments out of all the ones we've seen in the recent drop. So depending on your build, definitely prioritize those first. I would probably try and get them both up to level 4 before worrying about Mage Guard. And then your last abilities probably going to be get Mage Guard up for the fringe case you can use it, and then last probably the Medivh's Locket, unless you're trying to build a very specific thing around summons and arcane damage, but I think that might be a few too many hoops to jump through personally. Then we have Malchezaar. Malchezaar is a really cool one here. So he does something very, very unique where each of his abilities kind of has a bonus effect if it is hitting a certain type of character, or role of character, which I think is really neat. But yeah, so we have Party Crasher, so he attacks. If it's a protector, takes some more damage this turn. Check your weapons, which is Fell, deal 18 to the highest attack enemy. If it's a fighter, permanently halves its attack. And then All Realities, deal 25 to the next enemy who acts. If it's a caster, that's remaining health of 5 instead. So overall, I think the abilities you want to be leveling first are going to be Check Your Weapons and Party Crasher. All Realities is pretty cool, but if your opponent's doing really fast stuff, sometimes this does nothing. And they can kind of play around it. It's also 2 cooldowns, so you're not going to be using this a whole lot. So I think in general, Party Crasher and Check Your Weapons, I'd work on leveling those 2 first and deal with All Realities afterwards. Then it comes to his item. He has some pretty good items, and again, this is going to depend on the build you're going for. 3 moves ahead starts out at level 3, so you actually only need to upgrade this once. So this is an easy one to max out. You're running into a lot of casters and you want to slow them down a little bit. Definitely not a bad choice. Then we have the Parrying Blade. Battlecry, permanently reduce enemies' protectors and casters' attack by 10. This one hates pretty hard on things like Trigor and whatnot, so you're seeing a lot of Trigor or just a lot of protector or caster heavy attacking comps. This is definitely the way to go. And then Flying Aces. So he gets more health, and Battlecry, change a random enemy mercs role to protector. This is a very, very interesting ability, and I think it has a ton of potential, as messing with the colors of your opponent's units is kind of a rare thing you're not usually able to do. This one is going to probably take some testing before we see the full extent of it. I do think this might actually be his most powerful equipment overall, but it really depends on the context of the meta. So overall, all his equipments are good, but they are all build dependent. So if you're looking to reduce damage, Parrying Blade is the way to go. If you're looking to slow casters, 3 moves ahead. And if you're looking to gain a bit more health and disrupt kind of the opponent's game plan a little bit by changing their role, especially if you're not running into many protectors as leads, probably pretty good to go with Flying Axes. So overall, Party Crasher, check your weapon first. Then I'd probably get All Realities to level 3, so at least you have decent damage, and then max out one of his items depending on what is best for the build you're going for. Then we have Murloc Holmes. So Murloc Holmes, pretty cool character here. Similar thing where I think all of his base abilities are actually very strong. I think his base abilities are probably the strongest out of all the characters we've looked at here so far. In terms of what to upgrade, I think you definitely want to get Hot on the Case all the way leveled up first, as every time you're getting a bonus attack, and that is a pretty significant upgrade compared to just raw damage. And the Killer is also a really good one, but this one, as long as you get to level 3, you'll still be dealing decent damage, and then you can get those last 2 points of damage whenever. And then elementary, so this one is going to be a little more build specific, but if you're really trying to protect your characters and give them some extra attack and an extra chance to swing in at the enemies, this is a pretty good one. I think it's going to be very strong in Murlocs, because Murlocs care about Divine Shield quite a bit. So with that, I think if you're trying to use him a little bit more defensively, then I would definitely recommend leveling this up probably as your second choice after Hot on the Case, and then the Killer is afterwards. You can probably get all these up to 3 and then max out Hot on the Case and the Killer is in elementary. And then his equipment. So I think there are 2 really good choices for the equipment here, and one that is not quite as great. Paid up front. This one I think is going to be your go-to if you're running Holmes as a lead. The extra stats are really nice because he cares about attacking, but probably more importantly, Refresh 1 lets you choose any of these options on turn 1. That's a pretty big deal for a character like this. It makes him a lot harder to predict and play around, and just having more options is always a good thing on turn 1, so really like that. Probably the best equipment in my opinion. Second best here, Trusty Sidekick. This might work better in a summons build, potentially. It summons a 1230 Watfin who attacks enemies who damage your Murloc Holmes, and Watfin is a beast. So, cool ability. I haven't tried this one out too much yet, but I do think there is potential here, buffing up the Watfin with things like Yulon, or maybe giving it some extra attack, getting some more triggers in. Seems pretty decent overall. And the thing I'd level last is probably Suspect Everyone, as passive damage dealing isn't necessarily bad, but this is very, very specific, 4, 5, or 6. And though there are a lot of those speeds in the game, I don't think the damage is really necessarily worth it, because it is a relatively low amount of damage, even though it is triggering for free, essentially. Not a terrible item, I just think the other 2 options are a lot better. But yeah, overall, Hot on the Case first, then you can kind of take your pick between And the Killer is in elementary, but try and get them all at the level 3. Is what I would do, and then once you get them up a bit, then focus on an item. I think paid up front is the way to go for most builds, unless you want to try a fancy summon thing with Watfin. And then Suspect Everyone for your last upgrade. And last but not least here we have Tess Greymane. Definitely one of, if not my favorite of the bunch so far. Tess is really, really cool. I think she has some very interesting and hard to evaluate abilities, and much like a lot of the others, she's going to be kind of build dependent, at least when it comes to the items. So for this one, I think the ones you really want to level up first are going to be Yoink and Princess Power. I think the healing with Moonlight Resolve is a bit too conditional. It's not bad, it's just a lot of the times, if you're facing down a lot of damage, or you've just taken a lot of damage and you're facing down even more damage, healing 25, even though it's a decent amount of healing, isn't really good enough on its own. Now, maybe if you have some other protection, it can kind of work out, but I think just making sure your Yoink is dealing as much damage as possible, as well as your Princess Power being the best it can be, because stealing enemy abilities can be very, very strong. I think those are the 2 you want to focus on, and you can do Moonlight Resolve afterwards. Then comes to her items. So items are really build dependent here. I've been liking this one quite a bit. You get some extra stats. After this merc deals damage to a merc, gain roll advantage. So swaps up her colors, which is pretty good, and just makes her a really, really tough character to deal with. 20 attack, 100 HP. That's a lot of stats. Then second one, I think the one you'd want to go for here is Tools of the Trade. Transforms your Yoink and Moonlight Resolve into random single-use enemy abilities, gain plus 15 health. So this way you kind of start off with random abilities. This one is less of a guarantee, but there is kind of some high roll potential. Though it is worth noting, you don't get enemy effects from their items. So if you steal, let's say, a Vol'jin ability, or an ability that gets boosted by their item, like Trigor's Backlash, you won't actually get the effect of their item. I don't know if that's intended or not, but I'm pretty sure it is, because you don't have the item, so you don't get the bonus. And then the third one here, Cloak of Shadows. This one makes them transform permanently, and you improve their initial effects by 6. I don't really like transforming permanently. I think one of the powers of Tess is the fact that you can deal damage, then you get something kind of flexible to use next turn, then you can go back to dealing damage and stealing something else. But if you really want to go all in on whatever you steal, that's not a bad way to do it. A lot of variance there though, kind of like Tools of the Trade, but even more so because you're locked into it. But if you enjoy that kind of thing, maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, so overall, Tess, get that Yoink and Princess power up. Then I'd probably focus on her item. I really like Steadfast Convictions for the first one, but depending on your build, you can go with the other ones as well. None of them seem really bad or anything. And I'd probably do Moonlight Resolve last, as the healing seems pretty conditional. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for our Protector leveling guide. Gonna have one of these coming out each day, so probably tomorrow we'll be doing fighters and then closing it out with casters. Would love to hear in the comments below if you have any thoughts about this, if there's a way you did it differently for a specific build or something like that. It's a great time to kind of talk about all this stuff with the community, as everything is very up in the air right now. So I'm very curious to hear from everyone and what they've been focusing on. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.